The Grammys just announced they're adding a Best Asian Pop Music Performance category. Announced June 16th, 2026, it will debut at the 69th Grammy Awards in February 2027. And the internet is supposed to celebrate this. Supposed to post the thank you tweets and the crying emojis and the finally the Grammys see us content that the Recording Academy was clearly expecting when it made this announcement. Supposed to treat this like progress, like a win. Like the institution that has been snubbing Asian artists for decades suddenly grew a conscience and decided to do the right thing. No. What actually happened today is that the Recording Academy, the same institution that has been sitting on its hands while BTS broke record after record and generated some of the highest viewership numbers the Grammy telecast has seen in years, finally moved. But it didn't move toward inclusion. It moved toward management. And the difference between those two things is the entire point. The new category is described as recognizing artistic excellence in Asian pop music performances originating from or widely recognized within Asian markets, including but not limited to K-pop, J-pop, and C-pop, with meaningful use of one or more Asian languages. Read that again. Originating from or widely recognized within Asian markets. Meaningful use of one or more Asian languages. There it is, the box. Built with precise language designed to look like inclusion while functioning as a boundary. But it's not just a box. It's a box with a lock on it, and the Recording Academy holds the key. The category does not recognize Asian artists, recognizes Asian music, which is a critically different thing. Music that sounds Asian enough. Music that uses Asian languages enough. Music that stays legible as Asian rather than crossing into the general pop space where the real categories live and where the real recognition happens and where the real statement about cultural legitimacy gets made. The Recording Academy's CEO, Harvey Mason Jr., said 2027 is going to be an amazing year for the Grammy Awards, and that the changes reflect the extraordinary growth across music. Extraordinary growth. That's what they're calling it. Not a correction, not an overdue acknowledgement. Extraordinary growth. As if the institution discovered Asian pop music recently and is generously making room for something new, rather than finally being unable to ignore something that has been enormous for a decade and has been generating revenue and viewership for their own telecast while they handed the meaningful awards to other people. Let's be precise about the timeline, because the timeline is the most damning thing about this announcement. BTS has been breaking Billboard records since 2018, has had multiple #1 albums on the Billboard 200, has had multiple #1 singles on the Hot 100, has performed at the Grammy ceremony, has generated viewership numbers that the broadcast desperately needed, and has never been nominated in a category that reflects the scale of what they have actually built. And the Recording Academy's response to all of that? To a decade of evidence that Asian artists were operating at the highest commercial and cultural level, while the Grammy categories had no framework to acknowledge it, is a new category that requires the music to maintain its Asianness to qualify. That specifically includes meaningful use of one or more Asian languages as a criterion. That separates Asian pop from the general pop space, rather than integrating it. The lock on the box is the language requirement. The walls of the box are the Asian markets qualifier. The structural insistence that this music be recognized as Asian pop, rather than just as pop, rather than just as music, rather than just as excellent, on the same terms that excellence gets evaluated for everyone else, who gets to compete in the categories where the real awards live. Think about what this means in practice. BTS releases an English-language song, Dynamite, Butter, Permission to Dance, songs that topped the Billboard Hot 100. And those songs do not qualify for this new category because they don't have meaningful use of Asian languages. And they don't qualify for the main pop categories because the Recording Academy has spent years finding ways to not nominate them there either. So where exactly do those songs live in the Grammy universe? Apparently, nowhere. The box they built isn't even big enough to hold everything BTS has made. They built a room and forgot to measure the furniture before they locked the door. And that is before we address what this category signals about how the Recording Academy conceptualizes Asian artists and their work. The implicit message of a separate Asian pop category is that Asian pop is a separate thing, a distinct genre, a regional phenomenon that has global fans but remains categorically different from the pop music that gets to compete in the main categories. The same logic that produced Latin pop categories decades ago, and that Latin artists have been fighting against ever since. The logic that says, your music is excellent, but it is excellent over here, in this separate space we built for it, away from the main conversation. The Grammys stated that the Best Asian Pop Performance category will recognize artistic excellence in performances originating from or widely recognized within Asian markets. Widely recognized within Asian markets. BTS is widely recognized on every market on the planet, has topped charts in countries that have nothing to do with Asia, has sold out stadiums on every continent, is, by any honest assessment, a global act. Not an Asian act, not a regional phenomenon, a global one. And the Recording Academy's response to that global scale is a category that defines them by their origin rather than their impact. That is like giving an Olympic gold medalist a participation ribbon in a regional competition. The achievement and the recognition exist in completely different leagues. This is not inclusion. This is the most sophisticated version of the same exclusion that has always been happening, just with better packaging. Is the Grammys saying, "We see you now," while building the infrastructure to ensure that seeing you means keeping you categorized separately from the artists whose music gets to just be music rather than Asian music? The Latin Recording Academy saw this coming decades ago and built its own institution, its own awards show, precisely because the alternative was accepting permanent second-class status inside someone else's framework. Was accepting the Grammy Latin categories as the ceiling, rather than demanding that Latin artists be evaluated on the same terms as everyone else? The question the Asian pop community needs to be asking right now is not whether this new category is better than nothing. It might be better than nothing, in a narrow sense. The question is, what accepting it as progress signals about the ceiling being accepted, about the framework being legitimized, about the message being sent to the next generation of Asian artists about where their music is allowed to live in the eyes of the institution that the industry has decided is the ultimate arbiter of musical legitimacy. And while all of this is being processed, there is another conversation sitting just underneath it that nobody in the celebration posts is having. Every K-pop group that gets nominated in this new category in 2027 and beyond will walk through a door that BTS built with a decade of work. The Recording Academy refused to acknowledge while they were doing it. The groups that debut next year, the groups that are training right now, the groups that have not yet released a single song, they will have access to a Grammy category that exists entirely because BTS made the absence of one impossible to defend anymore. They will receive the institutional recognition that BTS was denied at every turn. They will be nominated in a framework that was constructed out of the pressure BTS generated. And most of them will accept that nomination without a single public acknowledgement of whose shoulders the whole thing is standing on. That is the quietest and most revealing part of this entire announcement. The Recording Academy gets to look progressive. The new groups get to collect the nominations. And BTS, the act whose commercial dominance, whose viewership numbers, whose sustained global presence made this category politically unavoidable, gets a framework that excludes their biggest songs and a legacy that the institution will reference when it needs credibility, without ever having to say directly that they got it wrong for years, while BTS was proving them wrong. The work was done by one group. The reward is being distributed to everyone who comes after. And the institution that withheld the recognition long enough to let that happen is the one writing the history of how it all came together.